They're telling us we're on the air, but I've got a little note that says Hangouts on Air is going away later this year, which is the problem that stopped us from doing USFanTV in the first place. If you'll remember, when we had our 2-month little break, it was because Hangouts on Air went away. Well, now we have Hangouts on Air back for a little bit. So I think what they're telling us is we need to figure something out before the next time it goes away. So maybe we better get on that. This is USFanTV. We have a lot to talk about. I am Pat. Chris isn't here yet. We'll see what he's like when he joins the show. You know who is here though? The minivan dad.
I am here.
You are here.
I'm here. I'm still multitasking, so you can deal with that for a little bit. But ask me questions that are poignant, and maybe I'll have an answer for you. But probably not.
What if they're not poignant?
Then they're standard for USFanTV.
Hey, let me ask you this, because this is something I was going to ask Chris, but we know how Chris will answer. Right now, are you more into the Women's World Cup or the CONCACAF Gold Cup? Or are you not into more than one? Do you hate them both, TJ?
I don't hate either of them. I watched the U.S. last night, or the other night. I did not watch much. I watched about half of the women this afternoon. I'm not going to lie.
Is that because of work, or is that because of?
Yeah, a little bit of both.
Okay.
For the Women's World Cup, and I think I mentioned this to you and Chris, but the team that I actually seek out to find, ironically enough, is Australia. And the reason for that is because Sam Kerr plays for the Red Stars. I don't know enough about women's soccer. I'm not going to lie. I'm still learning that I don't know all the players in the US team. I don't know. And to me, they're not, and Chris might have an opinion or two on this too. I don't find them as likable as some of the other teams. And therefore, I don't go out of my way necessarily to watch them. I know it makes me a jerk. I know it makes me sound awful, but it is what it is.
You know what? I'll tell you this. I usually with the Women's World Cup, I come online around right now. I am aware of the games, but I don't necessarily watch them until we get to the knockout stages. I've watched all three, and I've really enjoyed all of them. I do like this team, and I don't know what that says about me, but I've enjoyed the Women's World Cup more than what I've seen of the Gold Cup so far. Now, it's hard to be mad at a 4-0 U.S. win, but I don't know how much we really learned in that game.
We learned about as much. We learned about much as we have with any.
They didn't screw it up, right? I mean, it wasn't. It was enjoyable. There was a period of time early in the game where I felt like we were getting nothing going, and then all of a sudden, we kind of were on the attack for the better part of the rest of the game. But yeah, it was. We'll see. I feel like Trinidad and Tobago is going to be a much better opponent. We'll see what they do Saturday. But right now, I'm enjoying the Women's World Cup more, and I am watching more of it than just the U.S. I'm watching it. I'm treating it more like a Men's World Cup, not quite to that level where I do nothing for a month and draw the ire of my wife.
You don't do anything anyway.
I do lots of stuff, but I shut it all down during that. But I have the games on. Yes, I do. It's
liar.
Yeah. So I have the. It's hard work looking this good. I have the women's games on as much as I can.
What the hell happened then?
And you're right. I know. You're right. Sam Kerr was amazing the other night. And yeah, it's, you compare that performance to the Alex Morgan 5-goal performance against a weaker opponent. And, Sam Kerr is fighting for her team's life at that point to pull that off. I thought that was amazing. So
here's the thing with Sam Kerr that I appreciate about her. Alex Morgan, if you can take Alex Morgan out of the game, you still got to deal with Rapinoe. You still have to deal with, Muse today was really good. Tobin, yeah. Carly Lloyd. Pick your poison. Australia is Sam Kerr, like it or not. That it's like. And you're a Bulls fan, so I'm going to use this. It's like Michael Jordan. You know he's coming. You have to stop him. And you just can't do it. That's what makes Sam Kerr amazing. Look, watch a Red Stars game once. Watch Australia.
Yeah.
You know everything's going to her, and you can't stop it.
As good as she was, though, there were times where there was that one goal where she ran between the two center backs and had she skied up for that header, which was pretty awesome. But there was no marking. Like it was a complete,
but like I said,
a disaster of marking.
My NWSL is still a work in progress. But with the Red Stars, you know everything's going to go to her. And yet and that's the NWSL, which I think at this stage is still as high of a level as the Women's World Cup, especially these teams that aren't competitive. You can't stop her. She is that good. I am a huge fan of her. And then her comment after the Brazil game of just, you can suck it or whatever, I thought was outstanding.
Also, I was with my son plays for a club that has like an association with the Red Stars. And so I was at a camp that had a Red Stars coach and player at it. And they were talking that game that happened, and they were talking about it just like with the same amazement as a regular fan, except they know her, which is pretty cool. But it was cool for me to be like, yeah, they're amazed by it too. So Chris has joined the call, it appears.
So cool. I am Chris. I have joined the call.
We have been saving. First of all, Chris, Hunter wants to know if you'll add him on Snapchat.
What do you mean? Hunter's my only follower.
He is Chris So Hard on Snapchat. You should check him out there. We were talking a bit about the women today, and we ended up talking more about Sam Kerr the other day than the women's game today against Sweden. But we're saving the Guyana performance for you, Chris, because we knew that that's what you wanted to talk about. How do you feel?
I want to talk about both.
You talk about whatever you want. You look like you just came from a dinner or something. You have a nice shirt on.
I just came from taking second place in trivia, unfortunately. I did not win tonight.
You only win when we are together and united on the same team.
Indeed.
I just want to remind you, who does number 2 work for?
It is true, TJ, that
none of our viewers got that reference.
Chris and I dominate trivia competitions when we are in them together.
We won tonight. We were like 2 questions off winning. And one of them we had right, and Lori second-guessed herself when we got it wrong.
It's a referee's conspiracy that has caused you to lose. That's all.
I will tell you this: he's not wrong. There was a big one we were in a good 12 or so years ago, where a refereeing decision to make 40% of the total score a karaoke contest did cost us a $250 bar tab.
And what sucks is that I'm a pretty good singer, like if I give myself credit, and I had to sing karaoke for us, and I did a pretty good job, enough that like people in the bar congratulated me, and somehow we still lost because the dude who owned the bar confused our name with somebody else and gave our points to them.
That's right.
So we couldn't have finished going into it. We couldn't have finished lower than 3rd place, and somehow we finished in 4th place. Like it was mathematically impossible for us to have finished lower than 3rd place.
Except that it's you, Chris, and it's well deserved when they drop you.
These are the things that happen only when they don't happen to me individually. They happen when I'm associated with him. Michael is making fun of the Giassi Zardes goal, as he should. As he should.
Hold on. I got some names for it. Where did I called it a goal Cabezo, goal Izo. And I also said, in the face.
Christian said the most Zardes goal ever. Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. Thank you, Christian. You beat me to the punch.
You know the whole thing about, guys say that Katie Nolan does this stuff about guys say they could have scored it. Maybe I could have scored it if all I had to do was stand there with my giant fucking head and let it bounce off.
Does it sound like I'm making a comment about maybe the greatest goal scorer in World Cup history if I say Marta could have scored that?
Wondolowski would have missed.
True. I will second that one. That's the better comment right there. Boom, you win that one.
Yeah, that was
by the way,
it was funny that Zardes scored that and almost scored. He was called offsides, but almost scored that one where it was like he was trying to catch the ball out of the air, but his first touch was so bad that it almost went in the goal anyway.
You know what's weird though? Like we give him all this shit about bad first touches, and he has a lot of them. But sometimes he has great first touches. It's not like all of them are bad.
Look,
It's just like some of them are randomly terrible. You know, it was a good goal was that Paul Arriola goal. That was he
here's
came
the thing,
flashing in.
And I don't say this to like knock.
Oh my God, Hunter, I have that written down in my notes. I was going to say the same thing. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't say this to like knock the women exactly. I say this to give credit to Zardes. If he had the kind of space the women have in their game, and
he could have chested it down or something.
Completely ineffective opponents. Let's face it, Guyana was still light years ahead of Thailand.
As far as
Thailand's
being,
in a World Cup, and Guyana's in a Gold Cup.
The women are now quickly going to.
Oh yeah.
They have Spain and France in their next two. So
we've discussed this like to death before. That the problem with why the men aren't as good as they could be, and the reason why the women are as good but won't stay as good is because of college soccer. Now, what I was going to say was, Giazzi, if he had the kind of space and time that is allotted to a player in the women's game, look, he would look amazing. It's that in the men's game, you have 6 inches of space and you have a half second of time. You have 5 yards of space in the women's game. And so I just don't think they're the same game. And I think it's unfair that guys like Giazzi get trashed for that when we don't say the same thing. I've seen plenty of touches like that in the World Cup so far, but it's not punished in the same way. And so I think it's unfair that if we credit the women as being so phenomenal, it's unfair that we also trash Giazzi for not being able to do that.
But trashing Giazzi is just its habit.
Well,
are we assuming that Josie's hurt?
It's not my way of saying that Giazzi should be there. It's more my way of saying like there's a middle ground in both of those. Like I don't think the women are as good as we portray them to be, and I don't think Giazzi is as bad as we portray him to be. It's more the circumstances in which they play. If that makes sense.
Is Josie Altidore hurt? Is that why we're
okay?
Yeah, because there was during the game, if you were awake for it, which I know you weren't.
I was literally falling asleep, and
they did reference that, and that Berhalter wanted to get on for 15 or 20 minutes just for.
Yeah, I heard them say that. Yeah,
and it's just he's recovering. He's still coming back from injury, and he was the only one not warming up. So yeah,
Guyana had a lot of lower level English players. Basically, they're English players who just have some like Guyanese heritage. They can't make England's team, so they go where they can.
I have to address Hunter's comment that Paul Arriola looks like a knockoff Eden Hazard with his new haircut. He really does, like just like him. Just want him to play that well. Not that Paul did bad; he did a nice job. But
what's Eden Hazard's brother's name? I can't think of it.
Thorgan. He's got 2 brothers.
There's a Paul Hazard somewhere.
One just went to Dortmund.
That's the one I was trying to think of. He would be Hazardiola.
Yeah, it's so. I mean, I asked this to TJ earlier in the show, but it's hard to be mad at a 4-0 win with the men, and I can't say that they played poorly. But did we learn anything? Do we feel
it's
better?
It's nice to see a victory, especially when you've only got 2/3 of a game with Bradley, Pulisic, no Josie. It was cool to see 2 goals from Tyler Boyd, of course.
That's you know what's funny? That's like the opposite of the Gideon Zalalem one-time switch in terms of hype.
True.
Where it kind of went under the radar, and he's already way better.
It was the complete inverse. Like no hype. Actual production.
Like, oh, okay.
No production.
Oh, wait, he's good.
I wonder to some extent, like Guyana actually tried to play the game. You know, for so much of like these CONCACAF games, the other team is really just out there to like foul us, like kick us in the ankles as many times as possible, and disrupt everything, and just try to pile guys in front of the goal. It's like the Roman Torres way of I don't know, playing soccer. Part of me wonders if the fact that Guyana actually tried to play didn't necessarily play like to the U.S.'s strengths, but allowed us to avoid some of the deficiencies that the men's team has shown over the last few months, that if they'd actually sat back, like we didn't show an ability to break a team down by any means. We didn't show an ability to like pass around them so much, or how to defeat a park the bus strategy, so to speak. But we did actually show offense. We did actually show some abilities to make some passes, and that's certainly promising. I guess what I'm saying is, had Guyana done those things, would we have looked as, in a sense, good as we did?
What's it say to us that they didn't? Is it just they were confident in their own abilities, or did they not take us serious? Like, we might be able to beat these guys.
I wondered that a little bit too. That said, they don't think they're as good as, say, Panama, and Panama kicks the shit out of us all the time. I mean, speaking of like Roman Torres style of playing soccer, like one of the things, and I didn't think Weston McKennie had a great game by any means. One of the things that I liked about having him out
getting
there,
hurt when he plays for us, by the way.
Well, but that kind of leads to my comment was, at least with him out there, and he was able to make some good passes. He was able to give you the idea that if he can, I don't know, rein his, like he's sort of a new Jermaine. If he can sort of rein in some of his, I go wherever there's a ball or space or I feel like going, maybe he could be the next Michael Bradley, especially if, say, Tyler Adams isn't there for some reason. But one of the things I like is that at least we have another player with skill out there, because otherwise my feeling is, especially on this team right now, every time I watch Pulisic get the ball, I feel like being a Packer fan and watching Aaron Rodgers touch the ball. It's like, just don't get hurt, just don't get hurt, just don't get hurt, just don't get hurt. Because we're going to die if you don't. I mean, if you do. At least with him out there, it was like, well, okay, there's somebody else to take some of the pressure off him, some of the heat, and maybe play with some of the skill and talent. Because while his game wasn't great, he clearly showed that he was much better than the competition and much better than most of our team in terms of talent he possesses. And so that, I mean, that was promising. There were still, there's still a lot of things. It's sort of like, to some extent, the women's team this far in the World Cup, where until today, you were kind of like, I don't know, how good are they? Like, great, you destroyed a team of maybe amateurs in Thailand. Chile, they still don't care.
Sweden's a good team.
Yeah, like until they got to today, like what did it really mean? You know, you can go, oh, look, they scored 13 goals. Great, hooray. But they did it against, I don't know, beyond subpar opposition. Are they actually that good?
Robert wants to know,
I kind of look at
is
this,
Bradley
this
being
game
subbed off for Trapp at the beginning of his phasing out? I kind of would still rather have Michael Bradley than Will Trapp.
I don't, yeah.
If we're phasing him out, let's not make it for Will Trapp.
Yeah.
And you know what?
If we're phasing him out, let it be for Tyler Adams, but that's not going to happen right now, so whatever. I'm hoping that Berhalter's realizing that Trapp's ceiling is much lower, and like for all his faults, and there were some of his faults on display, and maybe some of that has to do with coming back from injury, maybe some of it has to do with age. Bradley got stuck in possession a few times. He dribbled into like stupid shit. On the ball's never quite been his strength. That said, he also delivered a few balls that I don't know who the hell else short of probably Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic are going to make out there. And I don't know if you can say Pulisic would, because Pulisic would just dribble around them. You know, some of those like long diagonals, who the hell else in our pool can make that play? So for the weaknesses that people saw in Bradley's game, and I mean, for those of you who aren't aware, it's usually me during games tweeting on behalf of USFanTV. So yeah, I was pretty active on there for most of the game, at least for the first half, maybe 2/3, until I started falling asleep too. But you know, I was seeing all the comments go by about, oh God, look at Bradley with another back pass and stuff. He wasn't generally behind the defenders, so I'm cool with that. There was only a few times where he did that, and really, well, whatever. I'll stop there and say, so all in all, his was actually a fairly positive performance. Now, the one problem I did see for the team was that the 10, 15 minutes of sustained strength and pressure that Guyana had, they were focused on him. Like for a short period there, they were out coaching Bearhalter or outplaying us. I tend to lean on coaching there because they were simply focused on Bradley. I mean, they had 2 to 3 guys that were just surrounding him at all times and cutting off his ability to dribble and his options to pass. So when you say, oh, he was passing backwards, well, some of it was no one was getting open for him. And some of that should have been that McKennie should have been there to alleviate some of that pressure. You give him another place to pass because too often when they were truly pressing, the problem became some of our defenders were like, oh, what do we do with it? Just give it to Bradley, which has kind of been our problem for years. And that's how we ended up behind the defenders. I wonder a little bit when we start playing, say, better teams in the Gold Cup, will that weakness be exploitable?
I don't know. I don't know. I wonder what Saturday is going to look like. And you would normally think prior to, Jesus, it's been almost 2 years, but prior to the end of the qualifying cycle, you would normally think TNT is a pretty easy win, especially in a Gold Cup on our soil. But who the hell knows now? So I'm interested to find out what the whole thing's going to look like.
I'm hoping that we just utterly destroy them in a statement kind of game. My feeling is it's probably going to be more like 2-1, which is what I was predicting for Guyana. Not like it'll be a win, but it may take a lot to get there. It may take a long time to get there, and it won't be particularly convincing. I think, this game against Guyana did a lot to perhaps negate some of the negativity around the team, but it hasn't done anything to promote positivity. There's still a lot of questions there that you have to, I think, logically ask. One is, it wasn't a particularly good opponent. 2, there were a lot of weaknesses on display. 3, McKennie didn't have a fantastic game, even though he was clearly more skilled than all these players. Is that a problem of him in this system? Is that a problem of him at the national level? Is that a problem of just inexperience and youth? I kind of make the joke. I was doing it because I was talking, didn't notice that TJ had taken a call, but I was kind of doing it to get to the walkabout comment that I knew TJ was going to make, where he sort of McKennie was kind of all over the place, which works, I guess, on a team if it's one guy, and Pulisic is that guy on our team. And he's the guy who kind of gets free reign to go where he wants. McKennie has to be a little more disciplined. And if he starts playing the Jermaine Jones role, Jermaine Jones was great at a lot of things. Positional discipline was not one of them.
Also, social media discipline, not one of them. The people want to know.
But that I can stand by.
How was the refereeing for you? Was it okay?
Guys, I don't always trash the referees. I trash them a lot.
Come on.
Come on, I don't always.
Yes, you do. Shut up.
Holy shit, he's listening.
Shut up, Dick. The refereeing was fine. Whatever.
Yeah, Pulisic. Kevin says Pulisic did nothing.
Great last night. Mexico didn't bring a great team, and it's like the few players they have who should be on one of their best teams keep going home. So
and you know what, like we've said many times, national teams are different than club teams, and when you just throw a bunch of guys together, as Mexico has done, and to some degree as we have done, who have never played together or haven't played much together, they sometimes look bad. It sometimes takes a while for one of the reasons that the U.S. women look so good is basically it's their first team. Like if you're a member of the national team, it is your team. That is your team.
Yeah.
And NWSL supplements that. It's not a thing that you go to, all the time. Like the men's game is kind of the opposite. So you have disjointed play and sections of the field not connected, and that's Greg's job to get that stuff fixed and quickly. But you're gonna see that stuff. especially in Mexico's case when they left a bunch of people home. It doesn't look good sometimes. So they'll be fine, and we'll see what happens.
Christian asks, why haven't the U.S. men been convincing? It's a new team with a new coach.
Yeah, exactly.
Following the biggest loss in American history, and a year and 14 months or whatever in which we effectively did nothing.
Right.
So they let this like negativity just fester, grow, explode, and they did nothing about it. And now you're trying to pick up the pieces. Well, you're trying to institute a new system with all new players, or pretty much new players, under a new coach. There's a certain amount of, I don't know, level setting you have to have there in terms of expectations. That said, Berhalter doesn't have in reality, Berhalter probably has 2 World Cups worth of time to get this right, because who the hell's going to fire him? His brother? Like, I'm sorry, USSF is a fucking train wreck. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants. But the reality is, for people, for the fans, for us, he doesn't have a lot of time to get this right. Like, you came in late to a ticking clock, and you need to do something. I mean, come on. We didn't have that much incentive to do a post-game show the other night. You know, when Pat was unavailable last night, we went like, it's okay. We'll do it tomorrow after the women's game.
I mean, to be fair, you put a game on at 9:00 Central Time.
I know.
I could have forced myself to be up, but I would have been worthless. So,
and like the real problem for everybody making jokes, like what happened was my computer, Google Chrome crashed, and I couldn't get it to reopen. So I had to uninstall it, then reinstall it, because otherwise I couldn't get my OBS to connect. So I couldn't then get the internet browser to recognize YouTube and everything. So like nothing was working. And it was 11:30 at that time. And I'm like, I'm not doing this shit. I got to work tomorrow. But on top of it, I guess my broader point is, when the 3 of us are kind of like, yeah, whatever, who cares? It says something about U.S. soccer on the whole, because the whole reason we started this was, this is what we did anyway.
Yeah, apathy is more dangerous than anger.
We would call each other, whatever. We've been having, like, Pat and I have been having these conversations for 20 years. TJ and I have been having these conversations for like 30 years. This is stuff that we talked about anyway. We just started doing it in front of other people. And when even we're like, I don't care that much, or like, it was boring. What do you want to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
That level of apathy is worse than anything for U.S. soccer, because if we're feeling it, what are those average fans feeling? What are those bandwagon fans feeling? They're feeling nothing. They're
not there. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Apathy is far more dangerous for a sports team than anger, and that's where we are right now.
That's the sad part of all this, and that's why they have to get this right. Like, I'll still stand by, the Gold Cup is shit. Like, it means more if we go to every 4 years and it truly becomes our conference championship. It means
it's not to say we don't want to win it. It's our shit to win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it's not quality competition, and adding more crappy teams from the Caribbean or South America doesn't change anything. It doesn't make it better. It just makes more games.
Those crappy teams forced us to not qualify for the last World Cup, though. So
exactly.
You have to kind of look in the mirror and.
Yeah. And that was kind of going to be my point. Like, it doesn't mean anything, and it doesn't make us better. That said, we're not in a position where it matters right now.
Right.
We need to get these results. We need to win this tournament, if for no other reason than to just get people saying something positive about this team again. And that's a challenge that the women don't face. I watched, and look, I'm on the record saying that I thought it was not a particularly flattering look for them to be celebrating goals at like 10, 11, 12, 13. against Thailand. I don't care what anyone says. It didn't look good. But and then on top of it, in the Chile game, these sort of like subdued reactions that were clearly like mocking the fact that people had said things about them scoring in the first game. The men don't have the luxury of being dicks about things right now, you know? Like they have to kind of go, yep. Like the women have that freedom, that luxury right now because they're carrying momentum, they're carrying quality, they're carrying wins, they're carrying like positive support. The men don't have any of that. So if the men look like dicks now, they're just dicks. Nobody goes like, yeah, but they won. The women can be complete assholes. And I kind of think they have been, but they get away with it right now because they're winning and things are going well for them. The men, if they look like assholes, just make everything worse for themselves. Like right now, I think Jeff Cameron would probably be the worst thing on this team because apparently Cameron's kind of a dick. Not to mention he has his like political statements that no one likes. Like you don't need more negativity around this team. The men can't afford it right now.
The other thing that I kind of find with this team is for the longest time when the men played, you sort of knew the faces and the characters of the players, like a lot of them. You knew Landon and Deuce and DeMarcus and Tim Howard and like it felt like you knew those guys.
Oh, most of the last 20 years, I probably knew those guys by voice.
Right.
I could probably still pick most of them out by voice. These
and
guys, I'm like, I know half.
I know a few, obviously, and you know, Christian and Weston and I guess Michael Bradley, if you're still counting them, but it's not the same. It's not it's going to take a while to get back to that point. And if there's more failure, it might not, or it just might take a really long time to get back to that point. But like we're like in tune with those guys, and that's why it almost also feels weird to have Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore, and I do believe that they're both good enough. Although I don't like it, I believe they're both good enough to be a part of this team. Yeah. It feels like they're from another team. It feels like we blew the team up and then like they came back or something. Like it doesn't. Not everything's connecting right now with me, and I'm like you and I have talked about, like you just said. We're the diehards, right?
Yeah.
And if it's not working for us,
we're their go-to.
If we're not feeling it, like, if we're not feeling it, they got big problems. And you know what? Some of that's on the field, and some of that they've done to themselves.
2 years.
What's that?
I haven't bought a jersey in 2 years, I think, and I'm not buying one this year. That's for sure. Look at this horrible shit.
The last two are at Ross now for $29.99 or whatever. Do you want the white one or the blue one with the American Airlines?
I will say, yeah, the American Airlines ones. I will say, they're pretty cool looking. I wish either we'd made the World Cup or they had.
I have the blue one. I like it.
No, they're good looking. I like them. I got to say, but I've been like, I'm not spending my money on you assholes. And this red one is atrocious. It's like they can't.
This red one sucks balls. Red one sucks balls. Leave it at that.
The jerseys never look worse in a game than they do sometimes a jersey in the initial leak will look really bad, but then you see it on the field and you're like, okay, that looks fine. Puma's notorious for jerseys like that. This one looks somehow worse when you see it on TV. It just doesn't.
I have said all along, you guys defended it. I've trashed that thing since the first image. I hate that thing. I think it is the worst. I think it's worse than the chartreuse one that the women wore in 2015. It is hideous. It's like they can't decide what it is.
But he hates the team, so that's understandable. I do wonder, somebody asked what the attendance is going to look like in Cleveland. That's a good question. It's a big stadium to fill.
Yeah.
The tickets were fairly, because this is not U.S. soccer gouging people. This is CONCACAF. I can't believe I'm saying something nice about CONCACAF. They don't gouge as much as US Soccer does. The tickets were only like $40 or something. It was fairly cheap, so maybe they'll get a few more people that way, but I don't think it's going to look like
They
a very
weren't
good crowd.
728.
Yeah. $97 for behind the goal plus fees.
Another $82 in fees. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess I feel about the men right now the same way I felt about the women after the Thailand game. It was good to see. It was nice to see some positive things happen. I still don't believe they're as good as the result makes them
Right. Let's see him do it against some.
Yeah.
The women will get the chance right away.
The women,
Spain's
I mean,
pretty good. And France is
beating Sweden
very good.
was a pretty big deal. Not just because it overcame the Olympics loss, but that they have a quality team. So actually showing, actually pulling off a victory there does, I think that makes the bigger statement than the first two games combined, really, because I'm sorry, it would be a better tournament if you just made it smaller and teams like Thailand weren't there. Chile still not great, of course. Clearly not Thailand bad, but like whatever.
I mean, on one hand, for it to be a World Cup, you have to have teams from all around the world. On the other hand,
they have to be good teams. You can't just be like, well, we found a team.
I don't know that qualifying got it right. There must be somebody better.
Yeah. Whatever. But yeah, my point is just, I feel the same way right now about the men as I did about the women there, where it's like, you can look at the score and you can get hyper and say like, oh yeah, look, they're going to do it. But the reality is, I feel like to some extent the scoreline flattered what they actually produced, or maybe just look to it because of the opponent. And it's hard to say, is this like, what does this team really look like when they have to face a true opponent? And unfortunately, because of the quality the men have right now, the opponent that could challenge them is going to be much lower than, say, we would have thought 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even. I can't say for the first time, but maybe you could say it's just continued of the first time, but over the last few years, last 2 to 3, we are less than the sum of our parts. And that's something you could never say about the US. We've always been more than the sum of our team. And we're just not anymore. And it's disheartening. It's whatever. Now we've been talking about this for so long here. I guess we'll see.
Anonymity nails TJ's conference calls perfectly. Like he seriously says the same stuff that TJ says. He uses the same terminology. I have to wonder.
He is TJ, or is this Luke or Willie?
All along.
Those are TJ's brothers, by the way. Maybe. Because I would not. The only reason I don't think it's them, I haven't thought that before, is that they would more openly make fun
I'm the
of TJ.
Fulburn Colonel.
And he would totally, like, TJ would be in a fight with them if this was one of his brothers.
This is a 2-year investigation. This anonymity isn't really a part of the show. He's an investigator after TJ for doing the show during these conference calls. That's fantastic. Yeah. So that's where we're at right now. We're winning. The women have won 3. The men have won their first, and no one's been scored on, and yet we don't feel great. And I don't know. It's hard to feel bad about what the women have done. You can get on them for celebrating too much in a 13-0 win, but I'm not going to get on them for scoring too much.
No.
And those goals,
they were exactly right to do it.
Yeah. Those goals could have come in play today. So they didn't, but they could have, and they've been awesome thus far. And I think they'll beat Spain pretty easily on Monday. And then
I think
I
the real
don't
risk comes
know if they'll
from
beat France.
Like, yeah,
That's going to be, you're dealing with a great team at home. So
that one is, to me, kind of a crapshoot. Like, you just you just sort of throw it in the air and hope it falls your way. I don't. Yeah, I don't know what to predict there. But yeah, I think Spain. Yeah, they're gonna take home. They're gonna take home the victory. I think it'll probably be something like the Sweden game today, like in the area of 2-0, maybe 2-1.
Yeah. That France game's going to be telling, and I think if we win that, we win the World Cup. So
do you? Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you have a prediction for the men against TNT?
I'm down on the women. I'm actually way more excited about the women than I am the men. Yeah, I think that might be a bad read by you. I mean, I enjoy watching the women a lot more. I get angry, even in the 4-0 win against Guyana the other night. I was falling asleep, and I was angry for a 9 o'clock start time in the Central Time Zone. But I was also like, I just wasn't. It didn't feel right, and I've been generally pretty happy watching the women play. I think they're fun. So, and I've heard some people say that this women's team isn't as likable as past U.S. national women's teams, and I think they're fine. So,
I mean, I could see it, but I think some of it, I could see why people say that, but I think some of that is more that they're being more honest or a little more raw or whatever this time. So things like their fight with U.S. soccer. I think that's a chip on their shoulder right now in part of this, and I think that's why they're doing things like, say, mocking people.
Yeah,
instead, like clearly the kind of subdued celebrations against Chile weren't like, we're gonna be nice here. They were like, oh, you guys made fun of us, so it's like, oh, we're gonna celebrate or something. It all felt like a giant, like a sort of spit in the eye kind of take. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that everything's going their way. They're in this fight against U.S. soccer, and they realize that every time they score a goal, they make U.S. soccer look weaker, and they look stronger. And I think they're doing what star athletes do, and that's sort of like, getting a little extra rub in there, a little extra dig, and being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put a little dirt in your eye too.
Yeah, I didn't care, and on the celebrations, like, it only started to bother me at like 10.
Well, like I said, it was fine with me up till about 8 or 9. Beyond that, it was like,
And I wasn't mad about it. I just felt kind of uncomfortable. Like
well, yeah, I won't say I got mad.
I know the
about it,
stereotype of Americans abroad, and I didn't really want to.
My feeling was like, they need to keep scoring. I realized that probably a plus 13 or plus 10, plus 11, like it wasn't before that. I realized at that point you've probably got your goal differential taken care of. But if the team you're playing is so bad, who knows that Sweden won't come through and score 15 on them? There could be an instance in which this goal differential means something. So yeah, you need to keep scoring. It's the opening game of a World Cup. You score as many as you can. I thought the people who got defensive around that either didn't understand what they were talking about,
Right,
or just dumb. But I did feel like, I don't know, at a certain point, you don't keep rubbing it in. That's not showing respect to your opponent. That's just being a dick. But whatever. That, like, I didn't get mad about it. I just thought more like, come on, like, you are representing all of us right now. Like, don't just be cool about it. Act like you've been here before. You've all scored enough goals before. Like, I can understand it's your first World Cup goal. Like, wasn't it Mal Pugh who scored it? Like, okay, I get it. It's your first one. Celebrate. Have at it. I don't think you need the whole team involved. Like, or Megan Rapinoe's like dance kick slide thing. Whatever. To me, it was just uncalled for. I wasn't upset about it. I just felt like it was kind of in bad taste. But
Are we
whatever.
still talking? Are we talking about the? Are we still talking about the Thailand game?
Oh, we're just kind of talking about all of it.
I think we were asked about it, but yeah.
Well, okay, hold on. Let me. I'll throw my 2 cents in because I'm really ignoring the shit out of what I'm supposed to be listening to. I agree. The first goal, yeah, I got it.
Record.
Well, no, I don't care. But I think for me, it was then that they went beyond, above and beyond to not celebrate against Chile for that reason. Oh, we decided we did the golf clap just to get mad. It's like they're being pissy about it.
See,
that's what Chris just said. Yeah.
I was making the comment before.
Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here, and I don't do it well.
It was an extra chip on the shoulder, and it was like, part of me appreciates star athletes showing attitude and things. So like, part of me kind of likes it, but part of me also goes like, God, you guys are dicks. And I kind of like it, and I'm also kind of like, yeah, I get why people might not like you for this. So I'm torn on it. Like, part of me liked it, but part of me also thought, it's just more like, maybe you guys need to tone the attitude down a little bit. Like, you don't have to rub it in everyone's face all the time. But
Anonymity, I'm a major. Shut up.
Like I said about some of it, I think some of it has to do with the fact that they realize every goal they get makes U.S. soccer look weaker, and they weren't just scoring World Cup goals there. They were scoring public opinion goals.
I literally don't know, and I do not want to at 10:30 at night get into a discussion about their lawsuit. But I still don't totally understand what they think is fair. Because, and I get it from like a per diem or a travel standpoint, they should get the same, and they've definitely done more to earn it. But I'm pretty sure all of the top women's stars were their top earners last year. And because they're paid in such a different way, I want them to get what's equal. I just don't know what that is, and I haven't done enough research into it. But there
is something to be said for. I understand why I say they want, equal pay, like not quote unquote equal pay, not quote unquote equal pay to the men, just straight up equal, but the men are paid for a number of things differently, or the women are paid for a number of things differently.
It's a different deal,
depending on how you look at it. And so, like, can you put it all on U.S. soccer to make that equal, when in many cases the women are already making a larger percentage in return than the men do anyway? Whether, like, I'm not saying it's equal. I'm saying that, can it be U.S. soccer's job alone to overcome that? Because
I do think that some of it is that
American women who play for Mexico, or who play for, like, there was an American woman on the Thai team the other day. Like, they're not paid equally, and presumably they're paid far less than these women. Does U.S. soccer then have to be responsible for that?
No, because they don't work for U.S. soccer. These are U.S. soccer employees. But
what I'm saying is, they're Americans doing this too. If you're going to say that U.S. soccer has to be responsible for effectively, making this all equal, in the face of, I don't know, the world not taking care of it, where does U.S. soccer's responsibility end?
Here's what I think it's about. The FIFA payouts are significantly smaller for the women than the men, and that's not really U.S. soccer's fault. But I think that the women, because they're planning on doing well in this World Cup again, whether they win it or not, I don't know, are making a point that the men didn't even make the World Cup, and I think the women want something more like the payouts that France got for winning the men's World Cup. And I don't know how U.S. soccer gets involved in what FIFA pays them, but and I'm sure that while Alex Morgan might rather get larger game checks and give up, some of the other things that she gets because she's rich at this point, I presume, I don't know that the bottom of your national team women would be happy with giving up the insurance and maternity leave and other benefits that they get that the men don't get. So you have within the argument what's right for the women as a blanket team might be different when it comes to
For
each of the
what's
individual
right for
women.
some of the individual, yeah.
Yeah, and so like I don't, and I hope everybody ends up happy. I'm tired of them suing US Soccer.
Yeah.
And I get that they've been
Well,
really
and
successful and
on
they
top of
deserve
it,
more,
if
but
if nothing else, like my stance is, you like whatever you feel about the women or anything. Like I don't. To me, it doesn't even have to come down to like, do they deserve it or not. It's more like, does U.S. Soccer deserve it? Like, I would be fine if all the players' salaries went up, and I would be
yeah.
fine if
Yeah.
the women making like the lower part of this, so if their salaries went up more, because why do I want U.S. Soccer to sit on $100 million uh, uh, pot of money when they're not doing anything with it except lining their own stupid pockets? They're
Well,
they're greedy.
are they not doing anything with it, or are they keeping it to pay out for lawsuits? I'm just
They do
curious.
get sued an awful lot. And that's not the comparison I'm making, anonymity, because it's a different deal. In most cases, and I've brought this up on this show too, they're not doing the same job as the men. There's
No.
men's professional soccer player and women's professional soccer player. They're separate. They do separate things. It's a comparable job, but in every other workplace in America, it's the same job if you're
Yeah.
a woman or a man doing it. It's the
Yeah,
same.
you can't say it's the same job when
The women don't go to Saprissa. The women don't go to Azteca to play. And that's not the US women's fault, but it's a different thing.
yeah.
And the
But
bigger the bigger issue is this. Christian Pulisic's very, very rich, right? Because his club team pays him a lot of money. U.S. Soccer has to subsidize the NWSL because they want it to survive and thrive.
Mhm.
It has to be different.
Yeah.
And so I don't know where it comes in, and I don't know what's fair. It's very different. So
And I'm sure you
other
guys
than the
talked,
per diems and the travel stuff.
and that was where I was going to go. But the other thing was medical coverage. I'm sure that was discussed as well. But while I was on my fourth conference call of the night, anonymity, I can't get an Article 15 for sensitive information when there's nothing in there that was poignant, sensitive, or anything otherwise. But that said, did we go over like even the medical coverage and things like that are offered to the women through the NWSL that play versus the men who that's all covered through their club team? And it, again, I know we've talked about fair pay. There's a lot of different add-ons that the women get for that reason that the men don't get. The men get straight, what is it? Like when they show up, they get paid and that's about it.
Yeah.
And per
They
diem.
get paid if they play, and that's it, basically. Yeah.
I mean, and again, we've talked about, and I'm sure it was addressed ad nauseum that the travel and everything else, that should be the same. That part's
Oh
crap.
yeah.
And
It's,
you know what?
it's ridiculous that they get that there's something different.
You know what? And I'm going to disagree with you, Chris, which that's I enjoy doing that, is if I don't want to see them get paid more money. I'm sorry, I really don't. Under the pretense that it brings the cost of my damn ticket down, which is way too high to begin with.
Well, okay. If that's the option, then sure. Like if you're just going to change the entire argument, then sure, I'd be fine with all of them getting paid less. If it meant that my tickets cost less, sure, fine, whatever. I'd be fine with all of them taking a pay cut in that case. But my point is just like, if the money's there and the organization is just going to sit on it and I don't know, not do anything worthwhile, they're not improving soccer for the United States. They're not making my tickets cheaper. They're not making it easier for me to see a game or to get to a game or to buy a jersey. They're not refunding me anything when, say, I don't know, a team completely chokes and doesn't even make a World Cup despite having some of the easiest qualifications in the world. Then yeah, by all means,
I do get the sense that they have enough money that they could just fix this and not have the bad PR, but they're stupid in a lot of the ways they handle things. So this is the cycle that they consistently find themselves in.
I feel like this is. I feel like this. Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you, and then I'll make fun of you.
Twitter the other day about somebody went into Glassdoor and looked up the reviews of what it's like to be a U.S. Soccer employee, and they are horrible. Basically, that you get no money, you're worked all the time, and if you're not in lockstep with the CEO and the COO, and if you don't know who those guys are, one of them has a name you might be familiar with. But anyway, if you're not all those things, that essentially you're just trash and you're like cast aside. Um, and then on top of it, you have to live in Chicago, so you got to like live in an expensive city, and you get paid like a substandard wage.
I'm just going to point out you're a substandard wage, but that's another story for another time.
Thanks for that. But anyway, just the point is, it seems like they just shit on everyone. And my guess is it's because at least a few people there are just pocketing the money.
It's a very FIFA approach.
Well, it is.
Let me, and I want to ask a little bit of a bigger picture question, because I'm kind of, we all have such a negative opinion of USSF, so on and so forth. And that's because we live in the we live in Twitter. What about those who don't? Do they have that same opinion at this point? I'm curious about that. I'm curious what you guys think of that.
Okay, if you don't, you're still hearing on Good Morning America that they're not paying the women enough. Maybe you've tried to attend a game and you were bled out for ticket price. I mean, they don't do well at seeing the perception and fixing it. They just don't.
Question: if you're not seeing some of this on Twitter, are you seeing them at all?
No, not really.
Well, and I
maybe now.
For the
wrong. You guys are both
realistically.
Yes. You know what most people's opinion of U.S. soccer is? I hate to say it, is Grant Park full of people watching the U.S. in Brazil. It's going to be bars full of people, right? But most people don't pay attention. It's going to be when the women hit the quarterfinals and the semifinals,
and everybody comes online. Yeah.
And it's going to be bars full. It's going to be bars full of people. They're not going to see the other stuff, because a lot of it to me is it's politicians blustering to bluster, and I don't think it does. I don't think it does justice.
That's my point. Like, in other words, you're not seeing anything until what? Until it becomes huge. You're seeing nothing in between, and that's another negative to U.S. soccer. Like you know, you were gone while Pat and I were talking about the biggest thing is. The worst thing for U.S. soccer is apathy, and when even we're feeling apathetic, what is everyone else feeling? They're not thinking anything. Like they're beyond apathy, or their peak apathy. I don't know, where it's like they don't even think about it. They don't even think to go like, oh yeah.
That's a level of corrupt that you only get at
the U.S. has a soccer team. You know, like
it's fitting they are in Chicago. Because if you just don't care, about the people are yelling at you and whatever, and you just whatever, I'll do what I want. That's a very Chicago attitude when it comes to politics. By the way, Sebastian is nailing it with the things we could do effectively with the U.S. soccer surplus that would be good. One of them that he said was bring down the cost of coaching education.
Boom.
Yeah,
Agreed.
some of the online stuff they offer for $25 is pretty cool. If you try to go beyond that, it gets incredibly expensive very fast. And if you're trying to create coaches who are knowledgeable and everybody on the same page, you should subsidize that. So that'd be a thing you can do.
Especially when you're pricing to get the maximum for every ticket. I still stand by, like, they've watched attendance fall at the same time they've driven ticket prices through the roof. And they're doing it because they feel like they can make more off $100 tickets that only 10,000 people go to than they can off.
Right. There's a graph and
that 40,000 go to. And on a small scale, that works. Their feeling is, if we can do this 3 times, we know we've got it. As opposed to, say you do the lower price, but you get more people, but your attendance fluctuates more. So you don't always hit your numbers. This way, they're always hitting their numbers.
Yeah, but when you go to sell that product on TV, and the stadiums are half full,
worse.
and it looks
You
worse.
drive people away.
It's different than
hurts.
the English Premier League or the Bundesliga on TV that looks amazing and makes people go, I want to go there.
Well, I might say it's similar to what the Premier League's doing, though.
True. Some of the teams, yes. It just hasn't affected the Premier League that badly yet. But
sure. I mean, they have much more local built-in audiences, and then much more global followers, or many more global followers. So there's more protection there. But I mean, if you look at the difference, watch a game, listen to the crowd. The difference between Germany and England is dramatic. And then watch the U.S.
Well, but now you're hitting onto a bigger point, but it's that NBC Sportsnet has obviously the Premier League, and now we're really going to veer off topic, and that seems to be what everybody watches. But
TJ's the best at veering off topic too. So
yeah,
here we go.
I fully admit I am. But I show up every time, unlike Chris, who decides to show up whenever he feels like, or whenever he wins against technology, which is
I'm
rare.
pretty bad about not showing up as well, to be fair.
This is true, but you have a hat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I've been here a lot more than Pat lately.
I guess where I was going is the Bundesliga, the crowds are full every week. The soccer to me is every bit as entertaining as the Premier League, if not better. And yet it doesn't draw the audience that the Premier League does. And so, I mean, I guess what's that?
I think that's also history. That the Premier League had better inroads in the U.S. and around a lot of the world than the Bundesliga did over the last 30 years.
And there's probably truth to that, because when you get really right down to it, when you get to La Liga, if it isn't Barcelona or Real Madrid, nobody cares. And I guess my point is, you would think the Bundesliga would be making better inroads within the States, and I don't feel like they are at this point.
And if it's not Juventus or AC Milan, everyone knows who wins already. And
well, no, even if it is,
even
if it is Juventus or AC Milan, everybody knows who wins.
I think Bayern separately does an amazing job, like the best job at marketing itself in America than pretty much anybody. But the league as a whole, the Bundesliga, does not. Bayern could be better.
Bayern and Dortmund. I think Dortmund's getting there in terms of marketing in the United States. But yeah. But I don't feel like English teams go above and beyond to market necessarily.
I say that to Chris all the time. They expect that we will be there. There's an expectation that they don't have to try. And Bayern doesn't have that expectation. They go out of their way to try to engage fans.
Well, I think that also just shows the difference between the broader FAs of each country. You know, like the English FA doesn't give a shit about anyone. They've done nothing to overcome.
So what you're
terrible officiating? Like they do nothing to fix it. They've done nothing to fix
I'm going to interrupt.
Fair play.
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you.
Stop! I'm not making a statement about it. I'm saying
I'm going to interrupt you.
I'm not making a comment about anyone. So stop.
The terrible refereeing is only against Arsenal. It's only against Arsenal, dude.
I wasn't getting into anything like that. Would you stop? No. What I'm saying is the officiating has been absolute shit and has been for years, and they've done nothing to change that. The scheduling at times is shit, and they do nothing to fix it. The fan situation is shit, and they the German FA, the Bundesliga has a certain max price for tickets, and you have to allow a certain number of fans to be able to access. I heard the other day, Dortmund season tickets start at something like €200.
Yeah.
For like standing room only or something, you know.
For the wall.
Arsenal ticket could be half that or more. A single game. And here you could go to every game in a season. And great, they might not be you might be in the roof, but nonetheless, yeah, you could be in the wall. And how can you
Because the Premier
Okay,
League has
whatever.
the most popular television programming
English
for
FA does
sale
nothing
in the
to
world.
deal with financial fair play.
The English FA acts an
They-
awful lot like a certain American sports league, don't they? Like that's where they
Yeah.
where they got all the ideas from, was the NFL. So, and then except they have a product that the whole world wants to watch. They're not in a position to care.
Yeah.
They're going to find themselves in a position to care, though, I think at some point when people start to go away from it. And yeah, that's why I do think that the German league is more appealing, because it's and I still love to watch the Premier League, but the German league feels more
Populous.
yeah, like it feels more accessible. It feels more like you see something like Union Berlin, you don't really see that in the Premier League anymore. You don't see those kinds of stories, and I find them amazing, and
Except
I'm glad they're
for
still around.
except for Leicester a couple years ago.
That was a complete anomaly, but it was amazing. Yeah.
All right, so we've taken it completely off the rails. Did we talk about Tyler Boyd at all?
We
when I
did
wasn't
earlier
paying
in the
attention.
show.
We had
Yeah.
some.
He is the, what did I say? He's the
Thank you,
opposite of Zalalem as far as the hype over his one-time switch versus what he actually provided on the field.
From Zalalem to Zilland.
Yeah. I kind of didn't really fully know who he was until the other night, and he was.
And then you're asking me because he played for Wellington Phoenix and is from New Zealand.
I
Like,
assume you,
I have
PJ,
no,
you've seen him before.
probably.
How many of his jerseys do you have?
I have 0.
TJ doesn't get his
I'm not going to
personalized, so it's just how many team jerseys he has.
Chris, you're correct on that, but I do want to point this out: is I probably have seen him play, Pat. Not going to say I haven't. That doesn't mean I've paid attention to it. A game on at 2 a.m, I'm watching it. It doesn't mean I'm
I know
paying
full
attention
well.
to
I'm not
it.
even joking. I know you've watched Wellington Phoenix.
I have.
It's just a matter of
Whether I'm paying attention at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. That's another story altogether. Pat, on a completely side note, is Finn playing this weekend in Libertyville?
No.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
So no, stalkers, you can't come to Liberty. All right. Have we done this?
We are done. You're done.
Yeah, this is USFanTV. We have stuff that you can look up online. If you just Google it, it'll come up, I think. I haven't checked, but we'll see. TJ, do you have any final words?
I've got nothing other than at some point Minivan Dad's coming back. I just don't know when.
It doesn't matter. No one cares.
No, really. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares about this either. Chris, anonymity's right. We're all depressed.
We're all depressed. But the baby is asleep, so life is good.
TJ is a soccer hipster. Anonymity. He likes the things he wants. He liked it before it was cool.
But legitimately, if it's weird and off the wall, I probably have watched it. So that's
he does. He's like, "Did you watch Oceania Champions League?" And Chris and I are like, "No,
no, of course not."
So,
you know what? You're done.
All right, Chris.
You're done.
All right. Everybody. I don't think we're gonna have a show Saturday night because 2/3 of this show is going to be at the Fire game instead of watching.
Ooh, speaking of the Fire,
the Gold Cup.
There is one last thing because someone's brought it up and we've been talking. What about Mihalovic saying "fuck off"?
You know what? He's 20 years old. He was pissed off because he lost to St. Louis on some crappy junior college / high school field. Yeah, I'd be pissed off because I lost too. And when everybody gets bent out of shape, I thought his reaction was perfect. Now, the fact that Section 8 decided to get their panties in a bunch is another story altogether. Is that the answer you're looking for, Chris?
That's pretty much where I'm at with it, too. Yeah, he messed up. He apologized. It's fine. At least he cares.
Section 8 does like to get their panties in a bunch. Are there enough fans in Section 8 these days to have multiple panties?
Are you commenting on the photos, the pictures from Section 8 of Section 8? Where there's like 10 people?
I call it, Pat and I have called it a Section of 8 for years now. At least 2 or 3, because that's about all there is there.
Yeah, whatever sector Latinos calling themselves now on the other end of the stadium are much better.
Yeah.
Way better. So, Chris, you coming down Saturday?
I found those guys entertaining. No, I got kids this weekend. I found those guys more entertaining for years anyway.
Well, there's that.
And they'll fist fight you after the game. So
My problem with Section 8 was always they took themselves too seriously. But then again, that gets back into my thing about supporters groups. I love supporters.
That's another show for another night. That's another show for another night, dude.
you're
All right,
done.
you're done.